my great pleasure to welcome to Time Space Visualiser, Terry Molloy. Hello, Terry.
Hello, Helen. How are you? All right?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm fine. Nice to visualize you in space, as we can't visualize each other face to face, as it were. So I think this is the way things are at the moment. But it's good to be able to make these links. It's great to have the technology to do that.
Yeah, and thank you for giving up time to talk to us about
not
Doctor
at all.
Who.
I mean, where am I going? I ain't going anywhere. That's for sure. It gets me away from the garden as well, which is rather nice.
Yeah. Well, if I can take you back a little in time to the 1980s, Davros.
Yeah.
Now, you were the third actor to play Davros. How did you come to get the part?
Due to the BBC technicians going on strike, actually. It's rather good because they were scheduled to do Resurrection of the Daleks with Michael Wisher, and I can't remember the name of the director now who was going to direct it, but the technicians went on strike and everything was slotted back a month while they sorted this out, at which time when they came to remount it, the director was working on something else. Michael Wisher was on tour in Australia, I think, or somewhere, and a new director was brought in called Matthew Robinson to take it over. And I'd literally just finished working with Matthew a few months before on a 6-month soap opera thing down at TVS called Radio Phoenix, where I did lots of voices and played this stupid DJ who was a bit, smashy and dicey. It's all for charity, mate. So he just rang me up and said, do you know anything about the Daleks? I said, oh, heck yeah. I mean, I was 16 when it started. So yeah, front and centre, I know them. Yeah. He said, and Davros? I said, I haven't a clue. Because I'd stopped watching, before, towards the end of not Pertwee, the end of Troughton, because I went off to university and kind of, got a life. And anyway, there were no videos, there were no repeats and things in those days. You either saw it or you didn't. So I missed all of Pertwee, and I might have caught the occasional one. And Tom over the years intervening. So I hadn't a clue who Davros was. I might have had a vague recollection of a photo or something or other. But anyway, he just sat me down in front of Genesis and said, that's him. Do you want to bring him back? And, what actor's going to say no? I mean, it's actually, I was very attracted because the majority of my work has been done on audio, on radio. Mm-hmm. And I'm very used to creating characters on radio and transmitting the essence of that character purely through your voice, because there is no visual, And Davros struck me as a challenge in that there was a visual element, but it wasn't a mobile, because the masks were so heavy in those days. It didn't actually give out much in terms of expression. So everything had to come from the voice. And I thought, that I can do, that's great. It's like doing a radio job on telly, but, you're sort of inside this great, this great rubber mask, not being able to do much. But so that's literally how it came about, really. I didn't audition for it. I didn't request it. It fell on my lap, as actually a lot of jobs tend to do, I have to say. I've been very fortunate like that through my life, that jobs turn up usually when people have stopped doing them. I tend to take over from people. I'm really good at taking over from people, so whenever you're ready, Johnny Depp.
I was going to say, how difficult is it taking over a role from somebody else? How much do you bring yourself, and how much do you have to recreate what someone else has created?
Well, you've got to bring yourself, because otherwise it becomes a caricature. Unless you're doing a pure, excuse me, this is a wet cough. It's not, no, it's nothing funny about this. Unless you're doing a sort of an actual imitation of a celebrity or a politician or something or other, as those who are superbly good at doing it do. You've got to bring, it's got to be essenced in you. The character's got to be seated in you. You can take on board which is what I did. I sat down and watched Michael, and I listened to the way his inflections went, and the tone of his voice and the quality of it and the intention behind it. and started to bring those to the fore. And in Resurrection, I very much did as much as I could to be as much like Michael as I possibly could. Although obviously we were using a completely new mask, because the one that Michael had basically fallen to pieces. It was of no use whatsoever. So they designed a new mask for me, which fitted like a glove. And it was literally that because it was like wearing a latex glove, as we're all now so used to doing when we go to the shops, it became part of you, and it informed how the character came out, because you're inside this thing. You've got no contact with the outside world except some little slits in the eye sockets, but nothing really much. And not a job for a claustrophobic, I have to tell you. It didn't bother me, but it really was, you just felt hemmed in, and it immediately produced a degree of angst and rage and what have you. And also, because the mask was so immobile, you had to enunciate really clearly to get anything out through it and get any degree of movement. So you already began to talk like that in this way, and then you bring the pitch down. You start to bring in the psychosis, and Davros begins to appear, and the doctor must be exterminated. And it was as simple as that, I mean, that's really how it came about,
Yeah, I was going to say, I was talking to Dan Starkey last week, and he was saying about how the prosthetic kind of made him quite grumpy as a character.
Yes. Yeah. You do. You are in this thing, and you're out of touch with the world, and especially when you've been used to working and rehearsing with people, and every day it's, hi Terry, hang on, you put this lot on, and it's in the corner, and people just walk past you, and they kind of go, ignore you.
Yeah.
You suddenly become a weird prop. And you've suddenly lost all that humanity you had when you were out of the mask. All they see is the outside.
Does that help you with the part?
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, if people do that already, you don't have to do much, do you?
No.
Boo. It is interesting though how you can be. I mean, I remember when I did it the very first time, we used to rehearse. We rehearsed at what they call the Acton Hilton, which was a big block of rehearsal rooms in North Acton. The BBC used for everything from, Morecambe and Wise shows right through to drama and Doctor Who, of course. And we would rehearse for 2 weeks, and then on the final day of rehearsal, John Nathan Turner would come in with all the techie people, and they'd stand around with clipboards, and we'd go through the whole thing in story order, so they could see it on the floor, marked out. We have it marked out for where the various places were, and make their various notes before they went into the studio the following week. And I remember being at lunch and the canteen, which is on the top floor. And I thought, well, I think I'll just go down and just check over my lines before we do this, just check a few things in. I walked in and there were 3 Daleks in the corner of the room, set there, going to be used on the set, and for the producer's run. And I walked across to get my book. And as I walked past these 3 Daleks, all the eye stalks followed me. Because the Dalek operators were already in them. And there was that moment of, oh, no, these are my boys. But yeah, I mean, the exterior of something can really change your attitude to it, It's like when you see somebody, you smile, there's an automatic smile back, if you're on a what? What do you want? There's immediate, oh dear, and yeah, the visual aspect of Davros is not basically, Eric Morecambe, is he? He's nothing like that.
No. I was going to say, we've talked about the voice, we've talked about the physicality, the visual. What about the physicality? How easy was it to move around as Davros?
Awful. Yeah. I mean, really. I mean, the fans now produce these phenomenal Daleks that glide all over the place, and they've got, wheelchairs underneath them, and, everything's automated, and so people say, oh, it must have been great doing that. I said, no. This is the BBC, it's as cheap as you can get it, So you've ostensibly got a supermarket trolley base, which always wants to go that way when you want to go that way. And then massive planks of 4x2 timber all the way around the outside to create the chariot itself. 2 lead 12-volt car batteries parked in the back under the seat in order to control the electrics, which are just the flashing lights in the eye and things like that. And then a hole in the floor, and they just say, pull it with your toes. I've got the strongest toes in Europe. I really do. And, you've got to pull it with your toes. It's very easy to push backwards without making any movement, but trying to pull forward without doing that is incredibly difficult. And, I have to keep on saying, well, can you just oil the wheels a bit more so I don't have to, take a run up at it to get it going. But yeah, physically it was monstrous, and even more monstrous when I did Revelation, because when they put me in the fish tank, ostensibly I was in this sort of, American football top piece, bolted into this bowl that revolved around. And I was on a swivel chair and I was meant to just swing around on this thing, except they'd built it out of all these steel girders to contain everything, but also to hide the fact that I'm underneath it. So it looked as though there was nothing underneath. Well, they didn't bother to measure me before they built this thing. So as soon as I started to revolve around, my kneecaps were being taken off by these steel uprights. So they didn't have time to do anything about it. We were in studio, it had to go. So basically they tied my legs up underneath the chair to my back. So I'm on the swivel chair, ostensibly with no legs, getting gangrene very quickly, or certainly lack of circulation, and having to pull myself round with a little bar underneath, and do the same thing. Which it worked. It worked very well, but it was incredibly painful. And bless him, Graham Harper, who was directing, I think he sensed the trouble. And we shot all of those scenes in the Gulf in about 40 minutes. Thankfully, they're all basically one-line scenes or reaction shots to something else that's been happening. But no, we got them out of the way, and I got out and got my legs back before they dropped off. But my gosh, it was painful, Actors suffer we suffer for our art. You don't realise how we suffer for you, I then got into one of these, new things. I thought, wow, if I could have had one of these, Somebody brought a Davros chair that they'd made for their son and put a motor in it, I said, can I have a try? And they said, yeah. So I said, and it was a powerful piece, it could do like 25 miles an hour. And I was racing around the convention hall, going, get out of the way, get out. And the guy was going, whoa, 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 whoa. I said, no, this is great. This is what I wanted to do all my life. I could go back in one of these, definitely. Yeah.
You would have been a different performance then.
It would have been, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it'd have been, much more fast and furious, I think, than, grumpy and angst-ridden. But no, that would still be there. But yeah. But it would have been a little easier on my body,
Yeah. So you played Davros 3 times with 3 different doctors.
Yeah.
How were they all to work with? They
were doctors, basically. I mean, a doctor is a doctor is a doctor. They're just there to be exterminated, as far as I'm concerned. I'd worked with Sylvester before many times in theatre, so I knew Sylv well. Peter and Colin I hadn't initially, many times since. But each brings their own thing to it, and you run with the script and you play off the person you're opposite within the scene. As I say, in those days we did have time to rehearse. So you had it's not a case of turning up on Monday and saying, oh, well, this is Peter Davison, thank you. Get in your chair right now, shout at each other. No, we'd had a chance to do it without, the cameras there. And the same with Colin and Sylv. Sylv, sadly, I'd just having to do it on a TV screen. He was the other side of the studio and I was, one side of the studio. So although we didn't physically meet, we were in the same room, but just shouting at each other on video screens. And Colin, I'd had the opportunity to work with Colin first on Attack of the Cybermen. So I wasn't Davros when I first worked with Colin. So we'd got to know each other quite well doing that. And we've got a fairly similar sense of humour, I think, really, or dark sense of humour, shall we say. And yeah, so we got our house on fire when we were doing Revelation, you know. Although Revelation was really more of a Davros story than a Doctor story. I mean, the Doctor just wandered around in the city blue cloak and had bits of polystyrene dropped on him until he came in and mopped it all up at the end, you know. But yeah, I mean, the Doctor, as I say, the Doctor is the Doctor, and they're different personalities, and they show different sides of that persona, and each of them lovely actors to work with, you know, and it's been a delight and certainly a major memory of my life. Yeah.
Did you find their different personalities affected your performance?
No.
You were consistently the same Davros.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
You work around me, you know. Not.
It's your show.
Egotistical. Yeah. No. I mean, it's you've got to deliver that persona as you know it, with the lines that you're given. You can't say, "Oh, I've got to be in awe of this person because they're so and so or something, or they're being nice to me." That's not in Davros's. You know, nice isn't one of his, you know, abiding attributes. You know, it's get out of my way. You know, you're in my way of doing what I'm doing. No matter who you are, you know, you're the Doctor. Even more so, get out of my way. You must be exterminated. There's no sort of halfway house about that or grey area. It's pure black and white, you know. So yeah, you approach it from that. I mean, obviously Colin and I used to do the odd things like, you know, after I'd had my hand blown off and I was wheeling myself off, he held out his hand to me and I automatically went, hey, you know, because we knew that it was a gag. And also when his finger was blown off, when my fingers were blown off, you know, they did a reverse on Colin, and he managed to pick up one of the polystyrene fingers and stick it up his nose, you know, for the yeah, so I mean, you work with people as people, you work with characters as characters. I work with a character, not the person. I mean, well, yes, obviously it's the person and the character, but my main focus was dealing with the character that I was dealing with as the character I am.
Yeah. You've mentioned Attack of the Cybermen. Obviously, you worked on that as well. And that was a very different character. Were you pleased to be offered a chance to do something different on Doctor Who?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was Matthew again. He just rang me up and said, "Look, do you fancy doing a Doctor Who but as a real person this time?" You know, and I said, "Yeah, it'd be great, lovely." So yeah, I came in to play this undercover cop, you know, who sadly gets killed at the end of the first episode, you know. And it was at this point, actually, you know, he gets clobbered by the Cyberman right at the end and collapses. And the Cybermen were really big, butch guys, you know, but they weren't terribly butch in some of the things they did, you know. So the first time the guy came over, it was more a case of, "Yo, die, you brute," you know. And they came and said, "No, you got to really hit him, you know. Don't worry about it. You're going to hit." I'm saying, "Do worry about it. It's me," you know. So yeah, he did it, and I collapsed. And then they said, "Oh, Terry, as we track down, you're falling across the cord that runs from the back of the back of the set to the TARDIS control, the electrics that run all the. Can you die so that you cover the cord, so you cover the wires?" You said, "Well, yeah, by all means, sure. Yeah, I'm 5'8". The cord's about 14 feet, but I'll try, you know." So I did. But then, of course, when they had come to the end of an episode, they reprise it the next week. Yeah. And it was here where we discover that the TARDIS has a self-cleaning system, that should anybody die in the TARDIS, their body automatically gets disappeared. And this was instituted by the BBC Accounts Department. Because if my body had still been on the floor at the beginning of the second episode, I'd get another episode fee. But funnily enough, it had disappeared by the time the second episode started. So, yeah. But no, it was great fun to work on. I mean, these are just things you make me laugh about the way they swap things around. But no, I did enjoy. I enjoyed TAC, and it was nice to be an ordinary person. Though my first Doctor Who love obviously is going to be Davros, always has. I know him too well now. This is the trouble. Also, having done him since.
I was going to say, you've worked on episodes with the two sort of iconic Doctor Who monsters, the Daleks and the Cybermen. Is there any other kind of monster that you would have liked to have appeared with?
I'd like to have appeared with the Master.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Davros and Master interaction. You see, the great thing I feel about the Davros and Doctor is it's not about guns and whistles and blowing people up and viruses and things like that. It's about the mental chess game they play with each other to try and get the upper hand. And they're mentally trying to trip each other up, or lead them down a path that's going to lead to their, not destruction, they never do get destroyed, but they're losing that particular battle, within the war. And I don't mean the Time War, I mean just generally in wars. So that, I think, would be good with the Master as well, because it would be a similar kind of battle. It'll be a battle of intelligence rather than guns and whistles, because Davros is not an action man, He has people to do that for him, Sort of, bring on the action people, go on, exterminate them, proliferate them, whatever you're going to do with them, do them. He's working out the Grand Master plan, and seeing how it works out and how it's going to be actually fulfilled. So, yeah, I think the Master would be one, that I think Davros would go. Any monsters, the Davros would have no time for it. They're just petty, pathetic. Just wipe them out. No, don't want to know. Talk to the hand, the one that's left. No, he has. I think he has this interaction with Time Lords, which is a very specific one. So it's not so much monsters as other iterations of the Doctor or his companions. I think is more of the area that I would enjoy. Yeah.
You've talked a lot about the sort of the designs of the Davros costumes. Did you have a favourite as well as ones that you didn't like?
Of Davros, well, mine were all the same. They never changed. I had the same chair, had the same jacket, which in fact was Michael Wisher's. Mm-hmm. And if the mask had gone off and they just did another pull of the mask, so I had the same mask. So there was no change there at all for me. It was more pleasant doing the Emperor Dalek in Resurrection, in Remembrance, because I didn't have to get all the other stuff done, and I didn't have to drag it around. They pulled me on and pulled me off because it was such a big, monstrous thing. I mean, the mad thing about that was the fact that it was, well, I call it the Texas barbecue because it's got this flip-top lid, so you open it up and there's Davros, frying on the coals. Was that, again, we had this thing, and I had to lift the lid to open it up. I had a lever to pull to flip the lid when the time came. But again, we got on the floor and they said, "Oh, wait a minute." We've got to have an eye like the Daleks have that is moving around so that we know it's looking and it's talking at the same time. How are we going to do that? And so eventually they just handed me a torch and said, "Can you just wave it around in front of the eye while you're talking?" So if you look at it very carefully, there's a point where suddenly this eye suddenly starts to recede and fade as I'm getting ready to yank the lever to pull the lid up. So yeah, that was. I enjoyed that. That was a favorite. And plus, I was only in it for a day. I mean, I very nearly didn't do Remembrance because I was working on a series for Central TV at the time. So I was on a kind of lease lend between the BBC and Central Television. And I was only allowed one day in studio, which meant I was meant to be doing the voice for the battle computer as well. But they got John Leeson in. Mm-hmm. So people thought the battle computer was in fact Davros because it looked a bit Davros-y from behind till they realized it was a little girl. So I didn't do that. I was just literally in and out to do that. Those couple of scenes in the as I say, the barbecue and away. So.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Terry, for talking to us. It's been a pleasure.
And don't forget, you've got to keep listening because Davros keeps on coming back, and with Big Finish, There's another biggie coming up shortly. I warn you
Ooh.
now. I warn you now.
Oh,
And it's a story by John Dorney called Palindrome. And it's with the 8th Doctor. And it's going to freak people's heads out. It really is. So, you know, keep your eye out for that one.
Look forward to that.
Yeah.
But for now, thank you very much, Terry. We
Thank
hope to
you.
see you in real life again soon.
Let us hope so. As soon as this all blows over or fizzles out or whatever it's going to do, yeah, I'll look forward to getting back to a more normal life of having face-to-face with people. Yeah. Helen, thank you so much. You take care.
Thank you.
And thanks, everyone. Bye.